What's good out there, Liquid Trucking? Welcome into the Liquid Trucking Podcast for episode 55. Drivers, it's good to have you here. Thanks for joining today. Of course, I'm your host, Marcus, but you knew that. Wow, what an episode we have for you today. So I actually have to build this story, paint the picture for you a little bit here, because today's episode was not planned the way that you're going to hear it. Monday morning, on the week we were recording this episode, we had planned on interviewing a high-level CEO from a very large company that operates exclusively within the transport industry, and it was going to be a very another kind of Mira Pandit type interview where we talk to somebody who has their finger on the pulse of the way the economy really is going as far as trucking is concerned. We were going to get into some mergers and acquisitions of small and large companies with him. It was going to be a very cool interview. However, unfortunately, due to circumstances out of our control, he was not able to make this interview. And so we kind of had to scramble a little bit. I mean, it was like, hey, you're 2 days behind already. Now you're going to be like 4 or 5 days behind. Can you get something done? And only because I am working with the great people of Liquid Trucking was I able to make that happen. And I'm very excited about today's episode too. We are going to be doing like a part 2, kind of a wrap up of our part 1 of Talkin Pigskin. If you'll remember, going back to maybe the beginning of September or possibly even the end of August, we had an episode called Talkin Pigskin where we brought on Quincy Rich, Tony Brown, and Matt Cleach to talk about their favorite college football teams, give us their outlook on the season, how'd you think things were going to go. And fortunately, because I know I can trust those three guys, I was able to get them back here in short notice so that we can do a part 2 of Talkin Pigskin and eat our crow or pat ourselves on the back for the predictions that we made. Should be a fun episode. I'm really looking forward to it. Now, I have to tell you about what happened with this episode, because we had the thing on Monday where we lost the interview. It was a big deal, but we got it taken care of quick. So what happened? Well, on Tuesday, I got on the phone with Matt and Tony and Quincy, and we knocked out the entire conversation. I did a bunch of recording on either side of that to get it all ready. I had this entire episode packaged up and ready to send to my editor yesterday. And I was really proud of it, actually. I thought, man, it was a great conversation. We talked a lot about college football. We talked about kind of all aspects of it. And I thought, I like that so much, I want to go back and listen to it again. You know, you're supposed to listen to your bad ones. That's kind of how you get better in broadcasting, is you wait for something that you really didn't like when you were doing it. You know, it kind of comes off live, so you're listening to it as it's happening, and maybe you had a bad feeling in your stomach. That's the one you want to go back and listen to for review. Typically, if you're patting yourself on the back and things turned out great and everybody was laughing and having a good time, there's not really much reason to go back and listen to that one again. We'll let Mike take a listen to it, make sure there's no clips in the audio or anything like that, and we'll put it up there. But yesterday I decided I really enjoyed that, and somebody said something that made me laugh, and I want to go back and listen to it again. I think it was about 19 minutes into the interview. So I pulled up the clip, and I drug the time scrub to 19 minutes, and I hit play, and I was watching the video, and my jaw is flapping. My chin is wagging. Let me tell you, I am talking, and I'm laughing, and I'm clearly listening, but there's no sound coming out. We did the entire episode, and yours truly, the only guy responsible for such things, apparently had a setting that had gotten switched, and there was no microphone. It was just dead. It was nothing but me chin wagging with no volume. And I'll tell you, there's only one worse way to listen to this guy chin wag, and that's without the volume. So looks like we're back here again today. It's Wednesday. I'm in a good mood. I didn't let that affect much of my night, only the first 6 or 7 hours of my evening, and then I got over it, went to sleep, got up, ready to come back in here feeling refreshed and do this episode all over again for the second time. Not something that happens to us very often here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast, but we like to be transparent, and I figured since I'm probably going to bring it up when we talk to the guys here in just a few minutes, I figured might as well go ahead and let you guys know exactly what the situation was. A little bit of a hiccup here. I think everybody's kind of starting to get to that holiday season feel. We've only got a couple weeks to get your Christmas shopping done. Things are starting to move fast towards the end of the year, and I myself was a victim of that circumstance. So even though it doesn't affect you at all, I apologize for the hiccup, mostly to Matt, Tony, and Quincy. But I'll go ahead and give them an in-person apology coming up just around the corner here. I do want to make sure and remind you to go check out our website. Head over to liquidtrucking.com, click the podcast banner at the top of the page where you see a picture of me. It says learn more or start here, and you will be transported to our one-stop shop for all things podcast that concern the Liquid Trucking Podcast. You can listen to all the episodes there. And for those of you that are maybe thinking about being a weekly listener but haven't quite figured it out yet, or don't really like having to pull up Spotify or YouTube or Apple Music or any of those, you can listen to every single episode the day it launches on the website. So if that is a place that you frequent, it's very easy for you to become a podcast regular, and we would love to have you. And a huge shout out to all the drivers out there that have listened to this show over the past months and, years. We're over 52 episodes now, so we have a year under our belt, and it's pretty cool stuff, man. The Liquid Trucking Podcast is a lot of fun. I'm super happy to be part of it, and that awesome website located over at liquidtrucking.com is worth your time if you are a fan of this podcast. Also worth your time, the conversation I'm about to have with Matt Cleach, Tony Brown, and Quincy Rich right now around the corner.
Welcome to the gold standard of podcasts for the gold standard of drivers. This is the Liquid Trucking Podcast with your host, Marcus Bridges.
Welcome back into the Liquid Trucking Podcast. It's time for me. I said in the intro, we're going to eat some crow based on the things that we said might happen in the college football season back in early September. But what's actually going to happen first is I'm going to eat some crow for losing this entire interview. I mean, the whole thing from start to finish, everything's gone. Bad settings, but I've got Matt Cleach, Tony Brown, and Quincy Rich all here with me again. Matt, what was going through your mind when I called you back right after the interview yesterday and asked you to do it all over again?
I thought you'd make a great truck driver. Bad decisions. You just fit right in now. Screw up one thing and move on to the next.
I got it. How about you, Tony? Any thoughts, any maybe advice for me or anything like that after such a gaffe yesterday?
Yeah, you just need to memorize where that sound effect you played for me yesterday about my Cowboys losing, you need to memorize where that button's at and get ready. Yeah, there we go. Yep, there you go, buddy.
Yeah, that played on a loop in my head for the 7 hours after I got off work, and between then and when I went to bed, that was just on a loop in my head the entire time. One thing you guys might not know about me is that I am a giant perfectionist when it comes to this type of work, broadcasting and recording. And when I do something like that, my wife has to talk me out of hating myself for 12 hours. It's really bad. So, but I really like when you guys give me shit about it, because then I can laugh about it. I laugh when you guys say it, but I'll sit in the mirror and really beat myself up. So, Quincy, how about you, man? Anything, were you surprised? Were you disturbed? Or were you just like, God, this Marcus guy? What went through your mind yesterday?
I thought you were just acting like Ohio State losing your marbles. Losing everything.
There we go. A little good football banter to open it up. I love it. I love it. Well, we're here to talk football. So listen, guys, thanks. I feel like you took it relatively easy on me there. But we'll see about next time. If I lose our next football conversation, I have a feeling I'm going to really be in for it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This was pretty good. Yeah, this was your one buy.
Okay, all right, I got it. Well, fellas, I've got a little clip for you here, and then we'll get into talking some football. Take a listen.
Drew Aller loads, going deep, far sideline. It's intercepted. Picked off by Nico Reed. 45-37, and congratulations to the Oregon Ducks the number 1 seed, and the 2024 Big Ten champions in their first year in the expanded Big Ten Conference.
ETN in the I formation. They hand it to him. Touchdown! Georgia SEC champions!
He's thrown for 306. 10 seconds on the play clock. Still the 2 timeouts. Not much pressure. Jennings, side of the end zone. Touchdown! Roderick Daniels Jr. Adam Randall back for the kickoff. Adam Randall bringing the kickoff back. And now they're 1 completion away from perhaps a chance to kick a field goal. It'll be a 56-yarder. The wind really not a factor. Snap and hold are good. That one is good! At the buzzer! Clemson wins the ACC.
Number 15, Arizona State. Number 16, Iowa State. 2 10-win teams looking to make history. A spot in the college football playoff awaits. There's Mr. Contact Balance again. Look at Scattaboo go. Tripped up just inside the 20. What an unbelievable first half by Scattaboo. Levitt's under center. Scattaboo's the featured tailback here on 1st and goal. And what else would you expect? His 2nd rushing touchdown of the game, 140 yards and 2 touchdowns now for Cam Scattaboo.
Yeah, Arizona State kind of surprising everybody and ending up in the college football playoff after a decisive victory in the Big 12 title game. Since we're starting talking about the Big 12, Tony, reluctantly, I will go to you here. Your Oklahoma State Cowboys, man, it was a rough year for them. And I actually just found something out that I didn't know when we were doing this interview the first time, but you got Big Green on your schedule next year, man. You guys are headed to Autzen Stadium in week 2 next year. What's your thoughts on the Cowboys and how things shaped up for you?
Well, I would say it was a little more than, just a little disappointing this season. They just straight choked. They were looking strong that first 3 games that they won, and then just never showed up again after that.
Yeah, where was the running back? I thought what's his name? Ollie Gordon? Was he injured or something this year, or was it just that the team around him couldn't pull their weight? Because that guy's he's a hell of a running back.
The team around him, he could only do so much on his own, and there's no I in team. So for him, it was pretty devastating for him this season.
I can imagine, man. But I always think back to that was it a Bud Light commercial in the Super Bowl where the guy says, they're interviewing a player and he says, you fumbled the ball 3 times. What do you have to say for yourself? And he says, man, they don't give me the ball enough. They gotta throw me the ball more. I'll get in the end zone more. And the reporter looks at the camera and he says, there's no I in team. And the player looks over the reporter's shoulder and says, well, there ain't no we either. So maybe it's the Cowboys got to come up with something different and just hand the ball to. Hey, Boise State did it and they got into the playoff on a good running back's back. But yeah, man, rough season for you. I am excited that you and I are going to get to go back and forth a little bit next year in the first couple weeks of the season because we're going to be playing each other and Quincy's going to give you some shit too.
Yeah, I'll be waiting for it. A big problem with this season was, and I said it on our very first one, is Gundy is so indecisive. He can't stick with a good game plan, and it just literally got shot to shit this season.
Well, I'll tell you one game plan he's stuck with that I don't think he should stick with anymore, and that's the spray tan, Tony. That guy, he does not look natural. He looks like he's trying to turn the same color as the jerseys sometimes.
I have to agree. I have to agree wholeheartedly.
Well, I'm sorry, man. Look, I know it's not easy. We've all been through it as college football fans. You have a little bit of glimmer of hope at the beginning of the year, and everything falls apart. I'm looking for the Oklahoma State Cowboys to bounce back. They're well-funded there. I know you've got you kind of have a version of the Phil Knight that Oregon has in the T. Boone Pickens family, or maybe the T. Boone Pickens estate there. So if nothing else, there's money running through Oklahoma State. You can buy yourself a roster now, and you don't even have to feel bad about it.
That is true.
Yeah, time to write some checks, man. Okay, well, I wanted to, and also here, let me ask you this, Tony, before we get on to Quincy and Matt, because I don't want to go away from the Big 12 conference just yet. As an Oklahoma State Cowboy fan, what do you think about the expanded conference? Do you like it more? Does it seem like it's going to be harder now to find a way into that 12-team playoff? What are your thoughts?
It's going to take a couple seasons for it to really iron out on who's going to be the dominant team, who's going to show out every season, and then who's going to be your home game, homecoming, kick around team.
Yeah, your doormats.
So, yeah, it's probably going to take a couple seasons, because we had the teams that came in this season, and then next year we've got a couple of more coming in. They're already part of the Big 12, but they don't get to play this season. They're going to be in next season, like Cincinnati. So it's like I said, it's going to take a couple of seasons for it to pan out, really, and I think we'll figure it out. I'm going to go back to it. We got to do something about Gundy.
There you go, man. Well, hey, I've offered this to you before, and I know Quincy won't be bothered by it. There is a seat open right next to Quincy and I on the Oregon bandwagon. If you would like to jump on,
that's for Matt.
I mean, Matt can have one too.
We got one on the tailboard for Tony.
Yeah. Just because it starts with an O doesn't mean I'm switching sides.
Okay, all right. I see it. Well, that other voice you heard there was my guy, Quincy Rich. Quincy, fellow Duck fan out there in the Liquid ranks, man. It's good to be a Duck fan right now. Your thoughts on this season? I think if memory serves, you had us going 11-1 this year. You got to be feeling pretty good right now.
I am happy I was wrong. I'm happy that 11-1 did not happen. And I tell you what, being in the great state of Nebraska, it's a great year to be a Ducks fan. So watching all the Husker fans they were all happy, just like Matt will back me up on this. They're all giddy, all happy watching them win this year. All of a sudden it just goes downhill like it always does. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we have a new head coach in the next year or two for Nebraska. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the great Oregon Ducks. So I think we'd had a pretty good year. Dan Lanning, I was pretty proud watching him coach and out-coach Ohio State there at the end. And I was a little upset the NCAA trying to come after him and penalize him for that crap. I mean, but when you hurt Ohio State's feelings, the NCAA will come after you.
Oh yeah, It's true, man. It's true, and it's. I think it goes beyond hurting their feelings. It was a you got made to look stupid moment. Really, I don't feel like as Ohio State. If I'm Ohio State, I'm not letting that get to me. That's a Bill Belichick move, man. That is a 1,000 IQ football move, and those types of decisions. And what I'm talking about here, for those of you that aren't up to speed on it, when Oregon played Ohio State back in week 5, Dan Lanning put an extra guy on the field with like 10 seconds left. They got flagged for it, but Ohio State ran a play that ran like 6 seconds off the clock and only gave them enough time to run one more play. When they ran it, they didn't have anybody open. The quarterback slid down. The clock ran out. There was nobody that I knew, no coaches, no players, no one that I'd ever talked to in the football world that knew that you could get away with that and that was a rule. And I feel like when somebody finds a situation like that, you ought to just give them their flowers, man. That was just, and yeah, I'm biased. If it happened against me, maybe I would feel different, but that's just a really professional, good coach move there. He pulled it off and got away with it. It's playing within the rules. Ohio State fans just need to stop crying. But how long have we been saying that, Quincy?
Oh, it's been years. I think Ohio State finally got what was coming to them. I'm happy that Oregon could give it to them.
Oh yeah.
So I think it shows that Oregon is is a actual Big Ten team, and we're here to stay.
Yep. They used to say West Coast football was soft, but I saw a Penn State linebacker throwing up in the end zone during our second drive of the Big Ten title game. So maybe we're not as soft as they thought we were, Quincy.
Yeah, I think Penn State needs to work on cardio and maybe also work on them ugly uniforms.
Yeah, right. I did tell one of my friends, he's like, why did that guy throw up in the end zone? I said, well, that's what happens when a Penn State Nittany Lion sees a real uniform for the first time. Just upchuck right there. Turned his stomach
white.
upside down, man. He didn't know how to handle it. Matt Cooch.
Duck fans are vicious.
Hey, man. Hey, it's been a long time coming.
People puke in the end zone. They're embarrassed to come out and play with their uniforms. I mean, what's next?
Well, you tell me, Matt.
I love the Big Ten, but you can't rely on Nebraska. They're not going to change their uniforms.
Well, it's true, but they outdid your prediction this year. You said 4-8, right?
I said 4-8. They're going 6-6 with a bowl game. They got their bowl game, so we're a championship team. Here we go.
Yep.
Boston College.
Hey,
and we might win, but we'll still get educated.
There you go, right?
College and education,
And that's one of the games, like, they probably played Boston College versus Nebraska in, like, right after the Boston Tea Party. They probably had their first game against one another, I'm sure, because those schools have been around and playing football forever. So this is like a historical matchup, kind of, right?
Well, if they set up the table, they can just have tea. Just sit down and have tea. Do it that way.
Yeah,
might be just good to watch that way.
Let's not watch them play football or try.
Right?
No, man. There is a little bit of a rough season for you guys, but I will say you're not the only Nebraska fan that I chat with from time to time, and it started off this season where Nebraska fans were a bit chippy, and they didn't have to play the Ducks, so they were giving me they were reading me the riot act. But after that Week 5 victory over Ohio State, it's funny how it changed, man. All you got to do to make a friend in Nebraska is beat somebody in Ohio, and you've got a friend in Nebraska. The entire state's been nice to me ever since.
Well, we got to have somebody take care of the bully.
Yeah, there you go.
Come in and help little brother out because we're getting our asses kicked.
Well, and our little brother didn't follow us to this conference, so we need a new little brother. If you're looking for a big brother, Nebraska, Oregon is looking for a little brother.
What they used to call that? Wasn't that Big Brothers, Big Sisters?
I think that's that's what it was, right?
Yeah,
it was just called Big Brothers, Big Sisters.
Yeah.
That's a good program.
Just adopt us. Give us some coaching. Maybe we can send our quarterback out with $1 million. You guys can train him. At least cut his hair.
Okay. Well, I will remind you, Matt, the last time we sent you guys a coach, it didn't go so well. So I don't know if you want that from us this time. We sent you Scott Frost.
Give him a haircut. Just give him a haircut,
Yeah, man.
We're 6-6. We did pretty good. The thing that I watched was the first 4 games for Nebraska. It was UTEP, Colorado, and Northern Iowa.
Yep.
Okay. Right out the gate, we're a powerhouse. We're playing like we got our shit together. Then Illinois comes to Nebraska. They figure this out and they whoop us in Lincoln. That's when I realized Nebraska's good until the other teams figure us out. Ohio State, we were a look past game. They looked past us when they played us.
Almost
they didn't
bit
think
them.
We were going to give them any. Yeah, it almost bit them in the ass. So here we are. We got Illinois stomping us. Ohio State barely beat us. Iowa for the same score 2 years in a row, 13-10 by a field goal. We've got to get our second half of the season, our tough contenders. We've got to start playing harder at the end of the season.
Yeah, Matt, well said there. And you mentioned maybe there might be a new coach here in the next couple of years. I got to be honest with you, just from the outside looking in, I feel like Matt Rule might be the right guy. I've talked to a lot of Nebraska fans that really like him, and the thing that I like about Matt Rule is he's got that Dan Lanning factor.
They're getting fuel.
He's got that Dan Lanning factor where he makes you want to run through a wall for him. I almost feel like Mike Gundy has a little bit of that too if we're Tony's Oklahoma State Cowboys, but yeah, Kurt Cignetti's another one where you watch the guy in a press conference, you listen to him talk to the team, and you feel like he's got the right mindset. I don't know, Matt. That's kind of my thoughts on Matt Rule, but where are you at with him? Because it's your team. I should let you talk.
My biggest fear is Nebraska doing a repeat. They do it all the time. And I hate that. I love the team. I love the colors. I love most of Nebraska, not all the state. But Nebraska's got a really bad habit when they don't get what they want.
the alumni and the fans have a fit. We've got some of the best fans in the world, but we have got some of the biggest diaper-wearing fans, too. And those diaper-wearing fans are usually the alumni with money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's my biggest fear. Don't get rid of him. We got our first bowl eligibility this year. I'm proud of that fact. Don't take it from Matt Rule yet. If you're going to take something, stop spending the money on these quarterbacks, spending $1 million to have them trained, and put it towards the whole team.
Yeah.
It's an effort, and it's an entirety. You spend $1 million on one player, and I'm not impressed by this. And I hope it's just a rumor, but I'm not impressed by it. That is unfair to the rest of the team.
Yeah. Yeah, and you
it
hope
went
that
straight to his head, and he doesn't work good under pressure, and he has a hard time executing. But he is a freshman. I'll give him that credit. But I'm really worried that Nebraska's going to start saying, Rule's got to go. He's got to go. He's got to go, because that's what we're famous for now. We're famous for sellout games with not full seats and getting rid of our coach when it doesn't go our way.
Yeah. Well, and it's tough now because it's a what have you done for me lately sport, right? These coaches might get a couple years, sometimes 3 or 4, and if they don't make a Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State turnaround, from 3-9 to 9-3, they might not get to keep their job after the second year, and it's I hope that doesn't happen either. I do think Raiola can be a really good quarterback. I hope that he tones down his attitude a bit if you think that that's a problem. I didn't watch a lot of it real closely. I saw him walking off the field with his head down a couple of times this year when I felt like a senior or a junior would have been trying to pick his team up a little bit, but that comes with experience.
Yep.
A lot of good players there on Nebraska. And hey, if I could say one thing to the Nebraska fan base, it would be put your money where your mouth is. Don't run the coach out. If they're willing to spend money on some players, then put some money into the program and, like you said, spend it on the rest of the team.
Yep. Do it as an entire whole thing. Like I said, I'm proud of Nebraska. I think we'll be okay next year. I'm not gonna say nothing until I see the spring game, and we'll just see what happens with Nebraska. I hope they win against Boston College. I'm banking on it because it's an away game, and we just struggle with that.
Well, how has Nebraska and Oklahoma State? How do they have the nerve to not ask you and Tony what you think and what you would do? That's what really pisses me off as a college football fan.
What would Tony do?
We don't have deep enough pockets.
Yep, it's very true, man. But you could control whether or not their Gatorade shows up on time. Okay, so
that's right. That's right.
Right.
Well, fellas, now that I kind of have a little bit of an idea of where you sit, how you're feeling about your teams and your predictions, let's talk a little bit about the new 12-team college football playoff. Of course, all of the matchups are set. And the cool thing about doing this podcast when we're doing it, because as I explained in the open, all sorts of things went wrong this week. One of them being that we're recording this for the second time. But what's cool about this is we're recording this the week after the championship games were played. The date actually right now, just peek behind the curtain, is the 11th of December. These games, these first-round games, won't have been played by the time this podcast actually releases, so I'm really happy that this is like a live conversation that we're all having, and we're going to get to see what happens after we listen to this podcast. So keep that in mind when we talk a little bit about some of the first-round games and the seedings here. First round going down December 20th and 21st. Let's just run down the list here and see who you guys got. Friday, December 20th, Indiana at Notre Dame. Quincy, who you got?
I got Indiana because I tell you this much, I think Notre Dame's uniforms are ugly.
Okay, that's a perfectly good reason to pick against a team in my book, man. I love it. How about you, Matt? Indiana, Notre Dame?
Indiana,
2 for Indiana. Tony?
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. I got to be honest with you guys. I'm going to split it here. I like Notre Dame in that game too. I don't know, man. Indiana, they play some really good ball, but then they got up against the Ohio State Buckeyes, and they kind of faltered a little bit against real good competition. So we'll see, though. I like it. We're split down the middle on that. That means it's going to be a good game. Saturday the 21st, we've got SMU at Penn State. Tony, who you got?
Depending on which bracket I go, because we were discussing on the other one, is I've got my favorite, the better teams, and then I've got my underdog bracket. So if I was going to go with this one, I'd have to go with Penn State for the higher bracket, and then SMU for the underdog.
Got it. Quincy, Penn State, SMU?
Penn State all the way.
Penn State all the way. How about you, Matt?
SMU.
He's going for the upset. I love SMU's uniforms, and I loathe Penn State's uniforms. I'm taking a page out of the book on uniforms here from Quincy. I'm going SMU with the upset over Penn State. Maybe just because I don't want to see Penn State again, as an Oregon Duck fan. So
I want to see them again. I want to see Ohio State again, and I want to see Penn State again. We can beat them both to show everybody that we can beat them twice in 1 year.
That's a true committed fan there. I don't know if it's the thousands of dollars that I spend on season tickets and tailgates each year, but I feel like if I get too proud like that, I jinx the entire team. So sometimes I want to see these. So, I was a part of that Oregon squad way back when, chanting "We want Bama," but the couple of times we ended up crossing up with schools like that back in those years, it didn't turn out so well. So we'll see, though. How about this? Number 12, Clemson at number 5, Texas. That's on Saturday as well. Where are you going on that one, Quincy?
I think I might go Tech on that one.
With Texas?
Yep.
Okay. Matt, Texas, Clemson?
Texas.
Tony?
Texas.
I absolutely despise the entire state of Texas, but I would have to take Texas over Clemson.
And we'll go ahead and we'll bleep that little bit out so that your Texas friends don't hear it, Tony, because I assume that you picking Texas in anything with a disdain for the whole state that bad, it's probably something that happens pretty rarely, yeah?
I've got a younger brother that lives in Texas, and he don't even like it. So
okay, well, see, so you've got experience. Now, let me ask, your little brother was probably a transplant from Oklahoma, right?
Nope, he was born and raised down there and never left.
Wow. Okay, so we've got a born and raised true-blooded Texan that hates Texas. I didn't think those existed based on the people I've met from Texas, but I want to meet your brother now. He sounds like a cool guy. And how about the big one? This one affects who Quincy's and my Oregon Ducks are going to play in the first round. Number 9, Tennessee, at number 8, Ohio State. Who you got there, Matt?
Tennessee.
Tennessee, my guy. I know you're not rooting for Ohio State. We'd have to pay you money to get you to say Ohio State.
I don't even like driving there. Kind of like how he hates Texas. I feel that way about Ohio State.
Okay.
The entire state.
I like it. Tony, who you got? Tennessee or Ohio State?
Oh, that one's a tough one. Ohio State, just so Oregon can, stuff a sock down their throat.
Man, I love the second-hand fandom for Oregon on this conversation has been great because I know even though his team's not in it, Tony's kind of pulling for the Ducks, and I know that Matt's kind of pulling for the Ducks, but I can't tell if that's just – is that just because they like us, Quincy, or is that because they actually like what they see on the field?
I truly, truly think that Matt likes what he sees on the field because we had a pretty good conversation Saturday night watching the Penn State and the Oregon Ducks game. I was sitting at the bar. Matt called me for about 40 minutes, and we had a pretty good conversation throughout the game. And I could tell Matt, he's leaning over to the Duck side a little bit. Not full.
I like him.
He's rooting for him.
I like him. I'll pull for him.
Nice. I like to hear that. How about you, Tony? You ready to root? You sure that OO isn't drawing you over? You want to throw on a green shirt, maybe some yellow pants or something for these playoffs?
No.
Okay.
I just absolutely despise Ohio State. So
no.
I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing them losing to Tennessee because that would be even more embarrassing for Ohio State than to losing to Oregon twice.
That's
how much I despise Ohio State.
Okay. Well, hey, man,
we're got a point.
2 peas in a pod there. I will say maybe we might even be 4 peas in a pod with that. I haven't gone to Quincy yet on this game because I know who he's going to pick. He's going to say Ohio State because he wants them again. Is that true, Quincy?
I'm out for blood.
Yeah.
I want him.
I can tell. I
want
man.
to beat him. I want our second string in the fourth quarter, and I want to see the V formation with a minute to go.
Yeah, I was telling my buddies I would kind of like to see at the Rose Bowl, like Oregon wins, and then when Ohio State's walking back into the locker room, the Ohio State AD just stops Ryan Day and says, "No, not you." And that I think that would be the most like quintessential fuck you, Ohio State loss, if I have to be real honest with you. Like, they, pull a Lane Kiffin where you fire him on the tarmac and don't give him a ride home. That would be everything I've wanted and more. I don't see it happening. I think we could beat him again, Quincy, but I don't know if they're going to fire Ryan Day over the whole deal.
Oh, I think if we beat him again, they'll get rid of him. I think he's going to be looking for a head coaching job in the NFL.
I will have a book coming out called 2024, The Year the Ducks Broke Ohio State, if that's the case.
I think he'd be a good head coach for the Chicago Bears. He's already used to losing.
To yellow. Wow.
Yeah, to green and yellow, too.
Green.
Are you a Bears fan, Matt?
Oh, I hate the NFL. I absolutely despise
Oh, that's right. That's right. You've told me that before. Okay, so that wasn't personal. You were just saying that he's cutting deep.
He is out for blood.
Well, fellas, I like all of our picks. Be interesting to see how they all turn out. I'm not going to go through and have us pick the rest of the bracket because it gets too convoluted, but we picked those first-round games, so it'll be exciting to see once again. First round going down December 20th through the 21st. Heisman finalists have also been named. We've got Travis Hunter, the two-way player from Colorado. We've got Ashton Jeanty, the just absolute do-everything running back from Boise State. Dylan Gabriel, the Oregon Ducks quarterback, will be there. And Cam Ward, Washington State transfer, now playing for Mario Cristobal in Miami, will be in New York for the Heisman ceremony. Tony, based on those four guys, who do you got to win the Heisman? And if you don't like any of them, who do you think should have won it?
Oh, I'd have to go with the kid from Oregon. After our discussions yesterday, I did a little research last night. And I liked his numbers. I liked what he was doing. The kid from Colorado, Hunt, I watched his interview last night, and he's just overly confident and cocky. I wouldn't even say confident, just cocky. I did not like his attitude at all. So he got nicked from it, so for my opinion.
Okay, so we got one Liquid Trucking Podcast vote in the hat for Dylan Gabriel. I like it, and I will say I agree with you. Travis Hunter is, he's cocky. And listen, I know he's a great athlete. I would say most schools they play against in Colorado, he's probably the best athlete on the field, hands down. But I also look at that guy, and he seems like he's made out of spaghetti and toothpicks to me. I don't know that he lasts in the NFL. A couple big hits from those dudes in the NFL, that guy might be laying there on the field for a little while. So I know that's not really what the Heisman Trophy registers, but I also don't think you should get extra Heisman Trophy points just because you play on both sides of the ball. If you're going to do that, you should be elite somewhere on one side of the ball or the other. And yeah, there's probably some Colorado fans out there that'll hear me say, I don't think he's an elite defensive back. I think he's really, he's got great ball skills. I think he makes really good catches. Odell Beckham Jr. did that a few times too, and look where he ended up. He's on his 8th team now. So I don't know, man. I like your pick for Gabriel, obviously. Nobody's surprised there. Matt Cleach, out of those four guys, who do you think is going to win the Heisman Trophy, or who do you think should have won it if it's not one of those four?
Well, honestly, I did like Tony. I did a little bit of homework last night after a conversation, and I'm gonna just go with. I don't know much about their stats and stuff, but Dylan Gabriel for Oregon.
I'm just loving the way this is going right now.
I can't root for anything Colorado.
So, okay.
Oh yeah.
Yep, that makes sense. Being a Nebraska fan.
You must be a Husker fan.
No, I was born in Colorado, you guys. I was born in Colorado Springs.
Oh,
and I'm absolutely embarrassed by the football teams from Colorado, the people from Colorado.
Okay.
And so I'm like Quincy, I'm out for blood when they play. I want to see Colorado lose every time. At everything.
Okay, all right. So 3 votes in the hat. Well, excuse me, 2 official, and everybody knows where I'm going. Quincy, my guess is you're not going to surprise us much here either.
Do you even have to ask?
No, I don't. Dylan Gabriel for Heisman.
You know where my heart lays.
Dylan Gabriel for Heisman is what this podcast just told everybody listening. I love it.
Calling it.
I love it, man. Listen.
Don't listen to any other sports podcast. We're calling it right here.
Exactly.
And drivers solve the world's problem.
Yep. And next,
this just turned into the Oregon Ducks podcast episode.
Well, that's when everything starts to get solved. You know, that's when we started solving everything, is when we turned it into a Ducks podcast. Look, we'll take on World Hunger next week, all right? We've got important college football stuff to take care of this week.
Right, yeah.
Take on the Oregon Sports Network now.
Well, my contact number is on the website, so if the Oregon Sports Network needs to call and get the Liquid Trucking podcast added to the roster, I can't say that I won't at least listen, okay?
Marcus Bridges, the new voice of the Oregon Ducks.
Oh, God, don't tempt me. Don't tempt me. You know what? I'll tell you guys a funny story about, we have a guy that has been our in-stadium PA announcer for the Oregon Ducks for decades. I'm talking probably 30 years. His name is Don Essig. He's a great guy, and he has this voice that I always did a pretty good impression of. And because when I was on the radio, we would like to bring, we called him Autzen Stadium guy in, and they would ask me questions, and I would just come up with silly, stupid, jokey answers. But we used to put this big tin bucket over my head so I would echo inside of it and do that voice, and it was super funny. We did that bit on my old radio show all the time until one day we get lucky and we get an interview with Don Essig. We were so excited about it. And he comes on and he says, I just want to know who the jokester is that's been mocking my voice. And I said, Mr. Essig, I'm not mocking you. I'm a giant fan. I am a huge Duck fan. I love hearing you. He's got this quote that he says before every single game, whether it's pouring down rain in Eugene or not. He says, it never rains in Autzen Stadium. And I used to say that at the end of every time we would do this bit. And when we had Don Essig on the phone, he said, I'm only calling you a jokester because you owe me some money. And I was like, what do you mean, Mr. Essig? And he said, well, 15 years ago, I trademarked the phrase, it never rains in Autzen Stadium. And you've been on your radio show here making tons of mileage out of it. And I think that I'm due a couple of bucks here on this thing. And he was dead serious, you guys. He had me, I was shrunken down. I was probably 2 inches tall by the time he finally let me in on the fact that he was joking. And he didn't expect any money from us. So, you know, dude, we've got, it's an exciting year in Oregon. I don't mean to turn this into such a Ducks podcast, but just so you guys get a peek behind the curtain, this has been my life for like the last 20 plus years, man. I've been stupid obsessed with Oregon football, so I apologize for bleeding green and yellow so much on here. I know it's a lot.
Hey, it is what it is. I love to hear it.
Well said.
Yeah, I can't say that it's a bad thing.
Okay, I appreciate
Your voice is booming through all the Liquid Trucking trucks right now.
Yeah, I know, guys. And I thank them all for listening and promise it's not going to be an Oregon Ducks podcast next week, but let me have my time with Quincy here, okay? Because we're really enjoying it. Guys, I've kept you on here for I've kept you on here for 40 plus minutes, 2 days in a row now. I really want to thank you all for coming through here. I said this in the open, and I didn't mention it to you guys yesterday, but you really did come through in a pinch for me yesterday, and now here you all are coming through in a pinch for me today. So thank you all so much for just being available and being willing to jump on here and chop it up about college football with me. Matt, Quincy, Tony, you guys really bailed me out here. I don't think you'll ever really understand how much you bailed me out. So thank you, gentlemen, all of you.
Hey, it's always a pleasure, Marcus. Always is.
It's always a great time to talk Ducks football, I tell you what.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Well, I like to give you guys a chance for some final thoughts, gentlemen. This can have to do with college football. If you just have a message for other drivers or staff or family members, of course, that's always welcome. But we'll get it wrapped up here after your final thoughts. Matt Cleach, I will start with you, my friend.
Go Big Red. Which you can't argue with that. And, you know, it's been an exciting year for college football, so I'm just excited to see what's going to happen through all the bowl games. So, go Big Red. That's what I got for you.
BC, that's the name of the game for Nebraska football. Let's head into next year strong, huh?
Yep. Take it away next year.
All right. I like it. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you being here. Quincy, how about you, man? Final thoughts, anything on the table?
I'm said we're going to take on Ohio State, and we're going to be playing Penn State in the national championship, and we're going to win it all.
Well said, my friend. Concise, straight to the point, and go Ducks, you son of a bitch. Oh, I forgot to tell you guys that on this one. And you guys should all know this. And really, this is just me repeating something that we talked about yesterday because it was good. But we used to have a flag out at our tailgate, actually, that had the letters GDYSOB printed on it. People would come up to us and say, what does GDYSOB mean? And it means, go Ducks, you son of a bitch. So you guys can, if you're rooting for the Ducks, like I know Quincy is, and maybe Matt out there for a little bit, you can hit somebody with a go Ducks, you son of a bitch. Just make sure you're out of swiping range, because sometimes people take that as an insult.
Right? Go Ducks, you son of a bitch.
You better get your wife to make a tattoo for that when I come up to Austin.
We will.
We're going to get the tattoos.
Yep, we talked about that yesterday. Quincy's going to make it down here for a game, and my wife's going to tattoo that on him. Can't wait for that, man. You guys are all welcome. Anybody that makes it down for an Oregon game's got to get in touch with me because you're coming to my tailgate. I'll be taking care of you. That goes for Liquid as a whole. Thank you, Quincy, for being here. Thank you for all your confidence in our Oregon Ducks. Tony Brown, going to make some room for your final thoughts here. Anything's on the table, man. The floor is yours.
Well, just got to talk about my Cowboys again, OSU this season. But I think they're going to come back fired up, hungry next season. So you just got to remember one thing. We got you next season, week 2, and our Cowboys are going to come duck hunting.
Okay, maybe a friendly little wager on the docket there between you and I. Maybe I don't know. We come up with something fun. We maybe like if your team wins, I got to eat a pumpkin pie one ingredient at a time, and if your team if my team wins, you got to eat a pumpkin pie one ingredient at a time. What do you think about that?
Hey, I'm game with that as long as there's no you know me when it comes to food, I'm going to eat.
Okay,
so as long as it does not, the ingredients do not include onions, we're good.
Okay, all right, cool. Well, look, Tony and I might have a little wager going on next year. You guys be kind of tossing that around in your mind and see if you can come up with something better that Tony and I could have as a punishment for losing the bet. Because this gets me excited. I love it when there's something riding on it. So let's go. Looking forward to having the Oklahoma State Cowboys in Eugene next year. Tony Brown, Quincy Rich, and Matt Cleach, thank you all for being here today. You guys all be safe out there. Keep the shiny side up, okay?
Always.
Have a good one, Marcus.
Fantastic stuff there from Tony, Quincy, and Matt. Very much appreciate those guys. Like I said, man, they bailed me out of a jam once because they were able to come on short notice and do the recording on Wednesday. And then they bailed me out of a jam a second time when they came on Wednesday and did the recording that we'd already done yet again. So huge appreciation to those guys. And really, I'm going to extend that to all of the drivers for Liquid Trucking because this is not something that is unique to Matt and Quincy and Tony. This is something that I get from many, like 90% of the drivers that like to come on this podcast and that want to come on here and talk to me. They are nothing but a text message away. It's quick. It's easy. And the other 10% of those drivers are great as well. They always get back to me. They're easy to get a hold of. It's just that sometimes they might not want to be on for that particular topic, which I totally understand. We don't ever want to force anybody to talk about anything that they don't want to talk about on this podcast. So always remember that if I'm beating down your door trying to get you to come on, it doesn't mean you have to, but we greatly appreciate the time and the expertise and the knowledge and everything else like that goes into it. I'm not a truck driver. I remind you guys of that all the time. So we wouldn't be able to have a lot of the conversations that we have on this show without you guys being such good guests. So really appreciate it. And again, big thanks to Matt, Quincy, and Tony for bailing me out not once but twice this week. Bet you didn't have that on your what's going to happen this week in December bingo card. The podcast host needs bailing out from 3 drivers spread across the country. Yeah, that's a tough one to come back from if you're me, but I'm going to use the end of the year to get better, stronger, faster, wittier. I'm going to grow a thicker beard. I'm going to talk even more, maybe even faster. I don't know, though. I'm getting old. This is a young man's game, this talking fast thing. I don't know how Ben Shapiro does it. I'll be honest with you. That guy's like listening to the Micro Machine guy sometimes. He's got his points, but man, he talks fast. Anyway, I'm off on a tangent. Imagine that as I record this podcast episode for the second time this week. What else did I have that was homework-wise? Yes, email me. I was talking about how good of a guest all you drivers are, and I really want to hear from more of you. I've heard from a lot of you as it stands, but I know that we've always got other drivers out there that have been with the company for a long time. Maybe you're thinking about it. You've heard my guys Dan Pijanowski and Polar Bear hop on here. And you know, it's a lot of fun when we do. We get to talk about the things that they want to talk about. So email me, podcast@liquidtrucking.com. If you have something you want to talk about, maybe you've just got an idea for an episode and you're not really interested in coming on to talk about it, that could be worth some Drive for Gold points for you as well. Remember, we're still always accepting your requests for, or your submissions, I guess I should say, for podcast ideas, topics, segments that we could do. If you want to hear something on this show, you guys kind of make this show, so it's important. Reach out to me, let me know. We do plan things out in advance, so I will warn you that if you suggest to me something, it might be a few weeks before you hear it, but that's okay. It doesn't mean that the suggestion went unnoticed. Of course, we can't do every single suggestion that drivers send in, but we try to get as many of them as we can. And we've worked our way through, 4 or 5 of those, and I'm always down to toss you guys some Drive for Gold points. I think the number is 50,000 is what I can hand you if we end up using your suggestion for a podcast episode or a segment on the show. So email me, again, podcast@liquidtrucking.com, or just hit me on my cell phone. As much as I would love to, still not going to give out my cell phone number on this very public podcast, but any number of drivers that you know will have it. If you've ever heard a driver on this show, chances are they've got my cell phone number. You can get it from them. Feel free to give me a call. All right. Great conversation, as I said, about college football as we wrap up the regular season. Championship games are in the books, headed into the playoffs. Who you got? Maybe that's something you can email me about. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the way the college football playoff was seeded. What do you think about my Oregon Ducks, man? They've been number 1 all year long. Looks like they might have the roughest road to actually win a title. We've also got some teams we didn't expect in here. Indiana, SMU, Boise State. It's a fun one. I already like this 12-team playoff. I have some suggestions for the seeding, but that's only because I come from a very biased standpoint, and my team is, well, the number 1 team in the nation. I feel like they got punished for it. So, but we'll see. And it's not the last time we'll talk football on this podcast. We try not to bring it up super often because I know that a lot of you guys listen to this podcast because you want to hear about trucking. You want to hear about liquid trucking, what's going on in the transportation market. And we really plan to bring you one of those episodes today. But despite my best efforts, couldn't make it happen. We will get that guy back on the podcast very likely sometime in the future. So stick around for that. I will say his name. I'll give it up once we actually have him confirmed in the future if we get so lucky to have that opportunity again. Big thanks to everybody listening today. Don't forget to go check out the website over at liquidtrucking.com. Be safe out there, drivers. Keep the shiny side up. I'm your host, Marcus. This is the Liquid Trucking Podcast, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in and being the gold standard of drivers on the road. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and tune in next week for another episode of the Liquid Trucking Podcast.